They laughed at my idea, called it too small, too weird, too emotional, said apps like that don't scale. So I didn't argue, didn't pitch harder, didn't beg for another meeting. I just built it in silence for the people they refused to see. And while they chased trends, I solved a problem they pretended didn't exist. 3 years later, they tried to buy me out, but I'd already sold it to someone who believed in healing more than hype. Now their interns use my app to manage their burnout. Their kids fall asleep to its voice, and every time they open it, they remember the founder they once ignored is the reason they finally feel okay. They said it was too niche, so I made it necessary. They said my app was too niche, so I sold it for $100 million, written in the revenge script tone. They didn't laugh out loud. They didn't have to. The smirk was enough. You know the one, when someone thinks they're being kind by not saying what they really mean. The one that wraps their condescension in fake encouragement. Interesting idea, they said, followed by, but it's a little narrow, don't you think? I'd just pitched my prototype, a mental health tool specifically designed for people who didn't fit the mainstream model, neurodivergent users, folks in small towns, night shift workers, trauma survivors who didn't trust traditional platforms. It wasn't built for scale. It was built for people like me. And that was the problem. They wanted daily active users, monthly active users, customer acquisition costs, and churn charts. I showed them handwritten messages from users who said, "This app is the first thing that ever made me feel seen." They didn't even blink. One guy on the panel adjusted his Rolex and leaned forward like he was giving sage wisdom. "Listen, the market's just not big enough for what you're doing. It's noble, really, but not scalable." Another followed. "I'd love to see you pivot to something with broader appeal. Maybe workplace wellness or corporate stress tracking." I nodded, pretended to listen, but inside I wasn't nodding. I was noting their names, their companies, their feedback, word for word, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted to remember. I left the room the same way I walked in, alone, but something had shifted. They called it too niche. What I heard was, they don't see them, the people I built for, the people who weren't loud, who didn't engage the way VCs liked, who didn't click 15 times a week, but would cry if the app was taken away. To the room, those users were invisible. To me, they were everything. I walked home that night past glossy billboards of apps that had raised millions, dating apps for dogs, social networks for brunch photos, meditation apps that charged $80 a year to breathe. But the world didn't need another polished distraction. It needed something real. And that night, on a second-hand couch in a one-room apartment, I opened my laptop and whispered one thing to myself. They think it's too small. Good. They won't see it coming. I didn't sleep much after that, because when someone doubts your vision, you either shrink or you sharpen. And I was done shrinking. I didn't try to go viral, didn't chase algorithms, didn't run Facebook ads, didn't make TikToks with fake testimonials. I just built. Every night after my job in IT support, the one where no one remembered my name, I came home, ate whatever was cheapest, and opened my laptop. No noise, just code. I'd study mental health forums at 2 a.m., read Reddit threads from trauma survivors, late shift nurses, disabled veterans, neurodivergent teens. I wasn't looking for users, I was looking for needs. Features came slowly, a panic button that dimmed the screen and played ambient sound, an anonymous journaling system with optional encryption, peer support with moderator protections, not chatbots pretending to care. Every line of code whispered the same thing. I see you. The user base? Tiny, but loyal. When a server went down for 6 minutes, 3 people emailed me like they'd lost a limb. One wrote, "I checked this app before I even brush my teeth." That message stayed taped to my monitor for the next 2 years. The app didn't grow in bursts. It grew like roots, slow, invisible, impossible to measure until it cracked the concrete. 1 month, a podcast mentioned us. Not a big one, but the right one. Downloads tripled overnight. Then came the email. A mental health coordinator at a community center wanted to use the app with patients who didn't respond well to traditional platforms. We tried Headspace. It felt like being sold peace. Your app feels like someone who gets it. No one else was watching, but I was building quietly. adding features based on feedback, fixing bugs at 3 a.m., hiring one moderator, then two, then six, not from resumes, from people who lived it. And still, I didn't pitch again, because by then I realized something. I didn't need investors who couldn't see value without a pitch deck. I needed partners who saw people. Year 2, 20,000 users. Year 3, 40,000. No press releases, no tech crunch, just testimonials that read like lifelines. And then one cold Thursday morning, an acquisition scout from a major wellness platform sent me a forward message. "Is this app yours?" I replied, "It's not an app, it's a lifeline." He asked for a call. I didn't answer right away because I wasn't done building yet, but I knew in that moment the quiet was almost over, and the world was about to find out what happens when you underestimate someone who builds in silence. The first headline didn't even spell the app's name right. Indie mental health app quietly gains steam amid growing crisis. A blog post, buried on page 7 of a news aggregator. But that small flicker, it spread like fire in a dry forest. Not because of marketing, because of timing, because the world was starting to understand that productivity hacks and meditation filters weren't enough. They needed something real. And the app I built in silence, it spoke their language, raw, unpolished, honest. Within a week, journalists were calling. At first I said no. No interviews, no founder spotlight, no stories about bootstrapped underdog defies odds. Because this wasn't about me. It was about the people who needed the app more than I needed the credit. But attention has a way of finding people who stop chasing it. A New York Times writer tried again. "I think people deserve to know why your app works." I let her interview 5 users instead. She did, and the article went viral. The title, "This app doesn't sell mindfulness, it listens." That weekend, downloads surged past 150,000, and with them came the money. Not from users, from offers, acquisitions, partnerships, licensing deals. Suddenly, the same VCs who ghosted my pitch 2 years ago were showing up in my inbox with "Hope you're well" subject lines. One even offered to fly me to their wellness retreat in Costa Rica. I declined. I'd spent years walking alone. I didn't need a plane ticket to feel seen, but one email stood out. A woman named Jenna, director of strategy at a healthcare startup with an actual soul. She didn't ask about profit margins. She asked about trauma-informed design. We met, not in a boardroom, in a park, no pitch decks, just 2 people sitting on a bench watching strangers pass and asking what the world needed most right now. Her words stuck with me. "We don't want to buy what you built. We want to make sure no one ever kills it by turning it into something it's not." That's when I knew this wasn't just buzz anymore. This was a moment, the kind that doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door down and says everything they said was too small. Now the world is begging for it. So I made a decision. Not out of spite, not out of desperation, out of clarity. I sold the app for a number I used to think belonged in fiction. $100 million. And a binding agreement. No ads, no data mining, no rebranding. The app would live on, exactly as I built it, only now with resources to grow. And the people who once told me it was too niche, they watched from the sidelines, silent, confused, wondering how the guy with no clout, no seed round, no network, just changed the landscape they said I'd never be part of. The stage was small, just a few chairs, one mic, a banner with the app's name, still in the same lowercase font I'd picked in a coffee shop. There wasn't a spotlight, just a soft wash of light from ceiling panels. And yet, it felt brighter than any tech stage I'd ever dreamed of standing on. The room was full, not just with press, but with people who used the app, people who lived because of it. Not users, humans. I didn't prepare a speech, I just showed up, the way the app had. Every night for every person who needed it. When the host introduced me, it was quiet. No roaring applause, just respect, which is louder than noise. I stepped up to the mic, looked across the room, and thought about the first person who called my work a sweet little side project. She was in the second row, one of the investors who passed on me early, now smiling too hard, pretending she was part of the journey all along. Funny how the view changes once the numbers go public. I started talking, not about the money, not about the acquisition, but about pain, how we all carry it, how some of us are told to bottle it, how I once believed I wasn't allowed to build something real with it, and how wrong they were. I didn't say their names, didn't need to, because they were all there, watching, live stream on, hashtags already trending. Mental health app that shocked Silicon Valley. Built in the dark, sold in the spotlight. Too niche? Try 100 million niche. After the conference, a reporter asked, "Why didn't you take a bigger stage for this?" I smiled. Because big stages didn't want me when I needed them. I'd rather stand where the people actually felt it. She paused, nodded, scribbled in her notepad. Then she asked quietly, "What would you say to the people who doubted you?" I looked straight into the camera. "Thank you, you gave me silence, and in that silence, I found my signal." And just like that, the moment ended. Not with a bang, with understanding, the kind that doesn't ask for headlines, because the headline had already happened. I was the founder of the app they once said no one needed. Now, they needed permission to even mention my name. I didn't buy a mansion, didn't upgrade my car, didn't throw a launch party with strobe lights and a champagne wall. I went home, to the same apartment where the app was born, still had the sticky notes on the wall, still had the dent in the couch where I passed out debugging at 3 a.m., still had the tea mug from the night I almost deleted everything. And that night I sat in silence, not the kind that feels lonely, the kind that feels complete. I scrolled through the messages, thousands, from users who said the app helped them sleep for the first time in weeks, parents who said it kept their teens off the edge, veterans who said it felt like someone was finally listening, even if it was just a voice in an app. That was the victory, not the number in my bank account. It was knowing I'd built something that mattered, something they called too niche, until they saw it working, until it proved too powerful to ignore. I walked past the cafe where I first pitched the idea, saw the same group of venture guys in blazers too tight for their shoulders, laughing too loudly, pretending they saw the future. They'd laughed at me once, said, "Mental health? Not scalable." One even offered to mentor me if I pivoted to productivity hacks. Now, that same guy sent me a connection request last week. I didn't decline it, didn't accept it, just left it pending, letting that silence speak louder than any headline. People think revenge is loud, that it means shaming them publicly, holding up receipts and screaming, "See, I made it." But real revenge is walking past the people who doubted you and realizing you don't even feel the need to look back, because they were never the reason you built it. They were just the reason you finished it. I didn't build the app to prove them wrong. I built it because someone had to, because I knew what it felt like to need something that didn't exist, to cry into pillows and pretend you were fine at work the next morning, to wonder if maybe it was just a phase. They dismissed the pain. I designed the platform. They ignored the silence. I turned it into a signal. They laughed at my niche, and I turned it into a legacy. I used to think legacy meant your name in lights, a building named after you, a speech on a stage, an award on a shelf. But now, I know better. Legacy is the message that arrives when you're no longer in the room, and they still talk about the thing you built. I don't take interviews anymore, don't do podcasts, don't chase headlines, because I don't need to remind anyone what I did. The people who needed it, they already know. The app lives on, not in my hands, but in theirs. The anxious teenager opening it at 2 a.m., the overworked nurse tapping play during her break, the father quietly scrolling through exercises to help his daughter breathe through her panic attack. That's legacy, the kind you don't see, the kind you feel. Sometimes I think about those first few meetings, the blank stares, the polite nods, the condescending suggestions to go broader, and I smile. Because I didn't go broader, I went deeper, into the very space they said had no market, into the quiet pain no one wanted to talk about, into the cracks they skipped over in search of trends. And that's why it worked, not in spite of being niche, but because of it. The funny part? They tried to buy it again, after I sold it to someone who understood it, a team who promised not to slap corporate logos on healing. After the headlines ran wild, from rejection to revolution, the same investors called back. "Let's talk future deals," they said. "Let's grab coffee," they said. But I don't drink coffee with people who only show up after the rain stops. Now I mentor others, not for credit, not for praise, but because someone should have done that for me. And every time a young founder says, "They said my idea was too small," I tell them, that's not a weakness, that's your edge, because what they call too small is usually just too real for them to understand. They said my app was too niche. Now it speaks in 100 languages, sleeps in a million phones, and carries the quiet hopes of people no one else built for. I didn't build it to get even. I built it because I knew what it felt like to be overlooked. And now, I don't need a spotlight. I became the light.